Okay, well, let's just jump into it. The first item on our agenda is to elect a vice chair. We got a chair last meeting, and I guess that's can't be undone anymore. So, do I have any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Steve Layton.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have 2 seconds. Do we have a third? Second. Okay.
Third. Fourth.
All those in favor of Steve Layton being the vice chair, say aye.
Aye. Steve, I'm going to have to bail at 5:15 to get to the Board of Health.
Understood. So let's see how fast we can get through a couple of easy ones. The next item on the agenda is, as you'll recall, we got a report on outfall locations and dispersion and everything. And as we narrowed things down, Kite Park was looking better than some other locations. And so we had an addendum prepared for the report. And that at the end of Anastasia's presentation, I think what I'd be looking for is a vote to accept the initial report with the addendum in it as our high vote.
Should I suggest that we endorse it rather than just accept it? If we think it's good, I mean.
You can make a motion.
Okay.
We'll see how the wording goes.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's just my spin on it.
No, that's good. Okay. Anastasia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Steve. I'm Anastasia Rudenko. I'm an environmental engineer with GHD, and I've been working with the town on the ocean outfall evaluations. And as Steve summarized, we're going to be talking about giving a brief overview of the simulations that were done at Kite Park. These are simulations that were done by Jim Churchill at WHOI using the peer-reviewed model that's been developed at WHOI. And it's building on the information that we learned in the first round of simulations, which has been reviewed with this group. That first round of simulations looked at 6 different locations in Buzzards Bay and 12 locations in Vineyard Sound. And what it found is that the flow in Vineyard Sound is far more rigorous in eastern Buzzards Bay. And it also found that if we look at locations in the east and the west, there's a lot of consistency among Vineyard Sound. So what that drives us to in our evaluation is to start looking at potential staging areas and eelgrass mapping to look at what is an optimal location for our proposed ocean outfall. So in the modeling for Kite Park, we looked at 2 different flow rates, 2 million gallons per day and 4 million gallons per day, both average annual flow. And for all the simulations, we did a treated effluent of a total nitrogen concentration of 3 milligrams per liter, which is what the facility, the Falmouth wastewater treatment facility, is designed for. And in the simulations, we're looking to meet 3 major goals. The first is to find an outfall location where there's no flow coming back to the shoreline or to nitrogen-sensitive coastal estuaries. The second is to minimize as much as possible the zone of initial dilution. So in order to meet the National Shellfish Sanitation regulations, we need to have a dilution of greater than 1,000 to 1. So we're minimizing the location where it exceeds that dilution criteria. And then our third is to find a location that discharges beyond eelgrass, which is a sensitive habitat along Vineyard Sound. We looked at multiple locations along Vineyard Sound for staging areas, including potentials for parking lots and in roadways. And while the top 4 are feasible, so the Trunk River lot, Elm Road, Mill Road, and the Surf Drive Beach lot, each have constrictions. And the more constrictions that you have in a staging area, that's typically reflective in construction costs. It's higher construction costs. There were 3 areas that were identified: Kite Park, Central Park, and Worcester Avenue, that provide a lot of flexibility as a staging area, the very large areas. So these are the ones that we focused on as we looked at a proposed outfall location for our next round of simulations. So as we were looking at the location, we're looking at our 3 locations: Kite Park to the west, Central Park, and then Worcester Ave. And we wanted to set a parameter for directional drilling. So we want to be able to directional drill to be able to get underneath and beyond the eelgrass. The typical parameter that we used is a length of 2,800 linear feet. You can go beyond that with a horizontal directional drill, but if you go much beyond, you're starting to get into specialized contractors, which limits the number of contractors that could bid on your project and could be reflected in the cost. So for this initial analysis, we wanted to stick with a more typical length. And so the 3 yellow arcs, that's the arc of that 2,800 foot parameter. The second thing that we looked at is the map eelgrass based on available information. So for this, we use the Mass DEP eelgrass surveys, which are done every couple of years, and we're looking at the most recent version. And then we're also looking at eelgrass data that was collected specifically for this project in 2022. So this in yellow is the map eelgrass from Mass DEP, and then the supplement from the eelgrass survey in 2022. And what both sets of data showed in general is that eelgrass in this region is found at depths of less than 20 feet. So when we're looking at a proposed location, we want to make it to at least 20 feet of depth for these initial simulations. And when we look at both parameters together, the shortest distance to get to 20 feet of depth and beyond the eelgrass is at Kite Park. So this is the location that was selected for the round of simulations. The simulations were done for 2 different flows. On top is 2 million gallons per day, and in the bottom is 4 million gallons per day. And they were done at 2 different seasons to assess if there is a difference in seasonality with the hydrodynamic conditions at this location. The background concentration for nitrogen in this area varies between 150 and 280 micrograms per liter. And that background concentration was established based on existing buoy data in the sound. When we look at our simulations at both 4 million gallons per day and 2 million gallons per day in either season, the increase in nitrogen projected by the model is less than 5 micrograms per liter in the immediate vicinity of the outfall. One of the reasons that we're looking at these very, very low concentrations is to be able to track the movement of the zone of influence. And as you can see in the figures, it's primarily east to west with a very minimal onshore component. That 5 milligrams per liter is well within the natural variability of nitrogen concentration in the sound. At dilution rate, so where the potential is less than 1 dilution, presented by the 2 million that's achieved instantaneously, and then for the 4 per day, that's achieved 300 feet or 1 model cell. So the conclusions of the Kite Park modeling have been consistent with the previous findings, that discharge at the modeled vineyard sounds would have a negligible impact of total nitrogen concentrations in the surrounding environment. And the model that was done at 2,300 feet offshore from Kite Park would meet all 3 of the established goals of no flow back to the shoreline or to nitrogen-sensitive coastal estuaries, a minimal zone of initial dilution, and discharge beyond the eelgrass. So the next step is to discuss any questions or any potential edits to the addendum, and then to continue to present these findings to the select board, to the Falmouth Height Association, and other interested parties. Concurrently, a fall meeting town article is being put together to collect additional field data and start preparing and submitting permit applications for a potential outfall. And also a scientific third-party review committee will be formed for this project that will review the data as it's gathered and will oversee the permitting also. So that was a brief overview, and I wanted to see if there were any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Anastasia. Can you back up a couple of slides to where you had the 2 MGD and the 4 MGD? So just to help, either one of them is fine. just to help frame this for everybody. Currently, the plans we have in place for the areas we've talked about, sewering and everything, the total flow comes out to, Anastasia, if I make this wrong, I think it's 1.73. So we modeled it the 2 and the 3, which is what we think over the I don't want to say near horizon, but the horizon we're looking at is all that it takes. But we also modeled it 4 because should over the next 50 or 100 years the town wish to do something slightly different or slightly more expansive, we didn't want to discover that the location at 2 would not tolerate more flow. So that's why we've got the 2 and the 4. So we're just looking forward, checking the capacity, but there's no plan to go anything above 2 at this present time. I wanted to clarify that, okay? With that, I'm going to open comments up to the board and then up to the folks sitting here. Steve?
That was an excellent presentation. I just have one question, that's just more curiosity.
Sure.
You mentioned that the 1,000 to 1 dilution was a national standard. 1,000 to 1 of what? I mean, if you start with pure sulfuric acid, does that have to be diluted to 1,000 to 1? Because obviously ours is way less harmful.
So it's a,
You want to do this?
Arbitrarily,
It's
or whatever
wastewater.
you're putting in.
It's wastewater. It's wastewater.
But no matter how bad it is, even if it's not tertiary treated as ours.
So in projects I've been affiliated with up in Maine and other places, 1,000 to 1 is sort of, you have to make that number. It's for secondary treatment.
But he's
Secondary
secondary.
treatment. Secondary
So in
treatment.
a sense, ours would be even better.
Ours is way better. Comments from anybody in the audience? Peter?
That's great. Now, we need to get corrected for the optimism. It sounds like this can solve a problem for the foreseeable future. We can say, dispose of this wastewater. Is that a correct understanding of it?
Say yes.
Steve said yes. Yes, it will reduce the current bottleneck is effluent disposal capacity, and this would provide the capacity that's currently in the plant.
So associated with that, see, applied like a sort of here, it's coming out of our years and so especially the guys as well, for the properties we put in, next year, and we have places for discharge the water now, and there's a lot of discussion about, for bylaw, I guess, associated with like but this takes all that discussion off the table when it comes to new capacity, because it doesn't matter if we're in body programs for here, and these movements for bylaw no longer a topic for discussion because we have all this capacity.
So I think you have more than one question there.
I know.
The flow neutral bylaw is a factor in the town getting 0% loans through the SRF. Okay, so the flow neutral bylaw is specifically to being able to get favorable financing from the state. Okay, if we wanted to go out and borrow the money without getting money at 0% interest, we wouldn't have to have a flow neutral bylaw. So they're sort of separated from the outfall. Okay. With an outfall, the town planning folks and others wish to modify the scope and scale of the currently defined sewer service area, both existing and planned, there would be some flexibility there. But that's not for this board to decide how the town wants to do its plan.
But we have more flexibility than we have.
On the land-based option right now, we're really bound in.
So,
Go ahead, Columbo. Go ahead, Columbo.
all this water, sewer water, that's relatively free from the ocean. But I've never heard anyone say anything about chemicals and stuff, so the alcohol. So is that taken care of with the secondary treatment?
Repeat your question again. I didn't follow.
Well, you know, I
Amy's not here tonight, but the wastewater treatment plant removes virtually everything down to this very low level. And then it's UV irradiated to kill the pathogens. And I think it's 2 log or 3 log reduction is the requirement coming up from any wastewater plant.
State standards was swimming by less than 130 organisms.
So back to the zone of dilution, which is less than 300 feet at 4 mgd, we meet all the state standards, yes. 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 I mean, we focused on nitrogen because that's the thing we're concerned about not getting back to the estuaries, but we're well below anything having to do with that.
Steve, if I may, on the flow neutral bylaw, when that was promulgated back when the Little Pond Sewer Service area was done, that was also saying that, we're doing this to clean up the nitrogen issue in the estuaries. Secondarily, there was great concerns from neighborhoods that, well, if you sewer, are we suddenly going to see an increase in density? And the bylaw was to say, no, sewer area will not see any increase in density. You couldn't build houses on unbuildable lots just because sewers were there. If the lot was too small before, it's too small now. So there would not be an increase in density of housing in a neighborhood just because you were sewered. And that was a key point. The one thing that did not address was, well, what about 40Bs? And as we saw in the Little Pond Sewer Service area, there were 2 40Bs built that could not have been built had we not had sewering. 40B overrides everything, as most of us know. But that was a second reason for the flow neutral bylaw. Just clarification.
And also plant capacity, right? Because you're adding more bedrooms, you're adding more flow. So there had to be some way to maintain the flow within the capacity of the plant.
Good point.
Other comments or questions at this time? Goldie? Appreciate that. If this board's facing a choice between land-based disposal, excuse me, can I finish? Okay, you said something. If this board is being faced with a decision between land-based disposal of effluent from a tertiary treatment plant or going to an outfall, which is where we're at here, the outfall is looking better than land-based disposal. You're advocating something different, and that's not in front of the board at this moment. Other comments or questions? I don't have that number in front of me. I can chase it down. If every time you get another 300 feet it's another 1,000 to 1 of what you previously had.
The introductory slide, Anastasia,
Yes.
shows the longitudinal flow. The current regime there is essentially completely longitudinal. There's almost no lateral flow. There's so that addresses your question. This addresses your question directly. There's extremely strong vertical flow. It's vertically homogeneous. It's so thoroughly mixed there. And the diagrams show you, the one in the upper right in particular, that the net movement is parallel to the beach, and there's virtually no lateral movement towards the beach. And believe me, the last thing we want is a chance that something's going to show up on our beaches, right? And this study very carefully demonstrates that there's nothing. If there was something floating on the surface, it might be wind driven during the summer with the southwesterly breezes. But this Churchill's whole study shows that if there's any concentration of materials at all, it's laterally, it's longitudinally, and it disappears, as they said, within 300 feet of the release point.
Did you have a follow-up? Corey?
In the south coast facing ponds, that's a common speaking dissimilar. Where does the effluent from those septic systems currently go?
Do the groundwater mixes and flows up to the coastal ponds.
We mix that.
Okay.
That's what they use.
So once you sewer those septic systems and send them up to the wastewater treatment facility for treatment, what percent reduction of nitrogen?
90%.
90-something%, yeah.
Goes from 35 to under 3 milligrams, according to the permit.
So would it be fair to say that the residents in Falmouth would have cleaner water because of the outfall, because you are taking the pollutants out of the septic systems?
That's the point of everything.
Health concerns, nutrient concerns would actually be reduced over the conditions that they are today.
The answer is probably yes. We haven't completely studied that, but all past data would indicate that is true.
And pollution.
Yeah, because the treatment plant does remove things. It might not remove all of the metals, might not remove all the pharmaceuticals, but it's a biological and mechanical process, so it's removing things at every step of this treatment process.
So would it be cleaner than the septic systems that are currently discharging today?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so far.
Right. One more.
The question I have is, what is the funding source, assuming something like this was to go through? Is this funded by state, federal, or as a community, which would be asked to bear some of the costs of sewering, do they also have to contribute to the cost of alcohol right now?
The cost for everything we've done today has been funded through a town financing scheme that I don't want to elaborate too far on now, but we typically put on what's called the state revolving fund, a request for projects we know are coming up in the next several years, and track down getting a 0% loan. But then through town meeting action, we get an appropriation, and we've been working trying to avoid increasing taxes as we've gone forward.
And there would be a component of principal forgiveness through the SRF program.
Yep. All right, I want to move to the next item. With that, Steve, I'm going to hand the gavel to you.
Are you taking votes?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
I'll move that the committee endorse the report as presented. I think that Mr. Churchill did a spectacular. I'm not a physical oceanographer, and I'm really not an upper-level modeler either, but everything that he put in the report, everything went out looked really good. Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Am I going to turn it on? Yes. Yeah. So, want to make a motion? Say initial report and addendum.
And addendum. Is it? Yes, the addendum.
thank you. Everybody on the board received last week a copy, I believe, of the revised Title V and the new watershed regulations. We've talked about this numerous times. The clocks.
There may be an audio problem.
Hello?
Not sure they
Hello?
can hear you back.
Okay. It's the first time in my life people said I'm not talking loud enough. Can you all hear me now? Okay, good. So on July 7th, these regulations went into effect and the clock starts ticking. And certain actions have to be taken by times certain in order to preserve our path going forward. I'm going to give you a presentation, but there's a needed action by the Water Quality Management Committee tonight because the Select Board is going to meet on August 7th. And they're going to expect a recommendation from both the Water Quality Management Committee and the Board of Health, which is wrestling with a similar situation tonight. At the end of this presentation, there's 3 possible recommendations that the board can make. The first is we notify the Department of Environmental Protection before January 7th of our intention to file watershed permits. The advantage of that is there's no immediate trigger on the installation of IAs at 13,000 homes. And I've highlighted this in blue because I think that's where we want to go, but I am open to all discussion. The second one is we notify DEP we do not notify DEP. Oh, I'm sorry. I have this right. We notify the DEP before January 7th, 2026, or 2 years from now. So we have up to 2 years for the town to issue a notice of intent. However, as of January 7th, any construction of newer upgraded septic systems will have to be IAs. So if you're on one of the peninsulas that's going to get sewered in the near future, but you come in to upgrade your system, you're going to be obligated to put in an IA system if we don't get the notice of intents in before now. The third possibility is you don't file watershed permits. You just say we're not going to do it. And then all septic systems in nitrogen sensitive areas will have to upgrade to IA. That's the 13,000. Oh, that was the first slide. Okay, so the intent of these regulations is to increase the Cape Cod town's rate of progress towards meeting nitrogen limits. The area in pink and green is what was in the original regulation. The area in green is what wound up in the final regulation. So there's 2 closely related regulations. One is a modification to the existing Title V. That's the portion of the state code that governs on-site disposal of wastewater. And the other one is a new section for watershed permits. Both became effective on the 7th of July. So the state has designated nitrogen-sensitive areas that followed all the proper procedures. This is a blow-up of Falmouth. A lot of Falmouth is in nitrogen-sensitive areas. If it's not green, it's okay. But the rest of that amounts to about 13,000 separate units of property. So there's 2 options, as I said. All property owners are required to upgrade their septic systems to, in their language, in the regulation, best available nitrogen removal technology, or the town applies for watershed permits, providing the town some timing and opportunity to schedule and meet each MDLs. The town must then implement what they say they're going to do in those watershed permits in accordance with the plan and the schedule. So I'm going to run through the Title V option: upgrade all septic systems. All properties in the nitrogen-sensitive areas of 13,000 properties have to upgrade to best available nitrogen reducing technology. Now, all existing systems get 7 years. So get up to July 7th of 2030. The other one is new construction and construction involving flow increase, which start in January 7th. The timeline caveat: DEP says they can extend the time limit for good cause. They recognize there's obstacles to getting 13,000 homeowners to dig up their backyard, notably engineers, contractors, and others, although the regulation doesn't really provide any specific guidance on if you make that request, how it will happen. A lot of the nitrogen removing septic systems are not ready for implementation at large scale. So it's an interesting regulation in that even if it was done, I'm not sure that we would meet our TMDL. The definition of best available nitrogen reducing technology is complicated and confusing in the regulations. But basically it says innovative and alternative systems approved for use by the DEP for nitrogen removal. So right now, I think there's, in the stage might still be, there's 6 or 7 that are approved, and they're approved at 19 milligrams per liter. In their regulation, they say it needs to be 10 milligrams per liter, unless there's nothing approved for 10 milligrams per liter, and then you use the best ones they've approved. So as of January 7th, the best ones they've approved are for 19 milligrams per liter. And that's what people would have to go forward with. Existing Title V regulations have 3 levels to get to the DEP general use approval. There's provisionary use, which is very narrowly defined. Quite possibly, as we get into a urine diversion program, that would have to go under provisional use or provisional designation. Then there's the pilot use, which means you get 50 units in the ground, monitor them for 2 years. Then you apply for general use. There's a couple of systems that are in the pilot use stage. I don't know of any others that are directly in the pipeline right now for pilot use. So there's a lot of what ifs inside the dig up your backyard and put a new IA system in. The DEP's process for reviewing and approving systems has been very slow historically and has been not effective at advancing high performance systems. So maybe they will change the way they operate. I just covered this. They're all 19 milligrams per liter now. Performance is very much less than optimal under seasonal occupancy and flow. So, enforcement. They talk about enforcement of the upgrade requirement. If you went down this Title V issue, that would fall on the Board of Health. I'll tell you the health agent is less than thrilled about chasing down 13,000 people. So, the big rubric here is that the Title V IA options will not achieve the TMDLs for the South Coast ponds. To achieve TMDLs for the South Coast ponds, we've gone through this several times. We need 100% septic nitrogen removal from the lower watersheds below Route 28. We're going to have to get additional nitrogen removal in the upper watersheds. Okay, the watershed permit option. We file a notice of intent to apply for watershed permits within 2 years. If the town does not wish the IA requirement for new construction to take effect, we need to file the notice of intent by January 7th. This suspends the Title V system upgrade requirement. It's a fairly simple online form. If anybody's interested, you can go to the DEP website, look it up, and read what's required. Overall, if you go down the watershed path, you have to apply for and have the permit issued before July 7th, 2030. And if you don't meet that deadline, you revert back to the Title V IA requirement. The elements of a watershed permit are going to have to include an approved plan and an implementation schedule, an annual reporting of water quality monitoring results for each watershed, which we do some of that now, but it's more work now. We're going to have a lot more watersheds to be monitoring. We have to produce a progress report every 5 years for each of these watersheds that we've gone for the permit, showing that we're making progress against the schedule we gave them, and as necessary, adjust our schedule. It's an adaptive management framework. Falmouth's been working inside that approach for a while. You evaluate your results every 5 years. You adjust and modify the strategy needed. The state's going to require a contingency plan. They're going to require you to say, if at a certain point you're not going down where you need to go, that you will use either approved IA systems or sewers. That's where they're at on their contingency plan requirements. So, an online application form. A watershed management plan can be a comprehensive watershed management plan or a targeted watershed management plan. What this means for Falmouth is we've already done most of this for the South Coast facing estuaries. We've not done it for Inner Harbor, so we have to pick that up as an ad. We haven't got that done yet for Oyster Pond. And we have not done anything like a comprehensive watershed plan or a targeted watershed management plan for any of the estuaries on the Buzzards Bay side. So there's work to be done, particularly on the Buzzards Bay side, to get to the point where we have plans to submit. The implementation schedule is not to be greater than 20 years. We have to have activities that happen in each 5-year period. As I said before, the contingency plan has to be reliant on conventional control technologies, which, as the DEP defines it right now, sewers or innovative alternative systems that they've approved. It has to have a cost estimate and a monitoring plan. And if it's a shared watershed, there has to be an intermunicipal agreement. So as we do these watershed permits, we're going to have to work out an intermunicipal agreement with Mashpee for the Wacoit watershed. Sandwich was at the very upper end of the Wacoit watershed. There's a very long section in the regulation, which is all about the de minimis exception, which when I got to it, I was like, what is this all about? Well, it turns out it's a response to a comment by Sandwich, where they are, I think, 3% of the load to Wacoit Bay. And if you're below a certain cutoff thing, you don't have to do the whole watershed management under these rules. We also share a watershed with Bourne. That's Magansett and Squitchy Carver. So we would have to do an intermunicipal agreement with them as well to get that in place as part of the watershed management plan. And I'm covering this because, it's not going to be just one watershed management plan. It might be several of them as we get into it. Reasonable progress. This is a thing they have in there. I'm going to cover this. I'm going to tell you this is not a guarantee. They do have a section in there because one of our big comments was the scale of Falmouth's estuaries and how much effort we were going to have to put in to get to where we needed to get to, but we weren't sure that we could financially cover it. So they put in a thing called reasonable progress, and it says if the plan doesn't attain the necessary nitrogen load reduction, the DEP may allow reasonable progress alternatives if the alternative is based on financial costs and environmental impacts, and we can't achieve the necessary reduction loads within 20 years, but we have to make 75% of the necessary load reductions in 20 years. Or an alternative schedule is appropriate based on watershed-specific issues. At item 2, I have yet to determine what that would be. Anyways, the plans have to have a schedule, and you're going to be held to the schedule. Now, at any time, the DEP can modify, revoke, terminate, or renew watershed permits. They've sort of taken, I am the king, I make the rules approach here. That if they don't like where we're at in 5 years or 10 years, they can turn around and say, no, we don't believe you, you're not doing the right thing. Go back and replace everything with an IA system. I doubt that we're going to get to that. We've made a lot of progress to date. We've got a couple of good plans in front of us that we can use right away. But they can take enforcement action. I believe currently it's a maximum of $50,000 per day. Corey, have you got a different number? It used to be 25. I think they raised it to 50 a couple of years ago. They don't often do this, but it's there. It's you don't want to be getting to the point when the DEP thinks they want to assess your fines. So this committee doesn't get to say how this is going to happen. It has to happen from the select board. The select board's looking for a recommendation from both this board and the Board of Health. So the select board is going to have to decide if the town wants to file notices of intent and apply for watershed permits for all the nitrogen-sensitive areas in Falmouth, or allow the Title V upgrade requirement to take effect in certain areas. They also need to wrestle with what role should the Board of Health and the Water Quality Management Committee play as we go forward. We also need to figure out who from the town should ultimately lead the process. I will tell you that I've been meeting in a working group that consists of Amy, the water superintendent, Scott McGann, Board of Health agent, and one of our consultants has been involved as well. Just getting through these regulations and trying to understand them. I think our little working group is pretty much convinced that current staff and current obligations over the next couple of years are going to require some additional resources. We need to go to town meeting for some additional funding. Don't have a number to put out in front of anybody yet tonight. We did have a meeting with the new town manager, gave him a version of what you've just seen tonight, so he and town council and the deputy town manager would understand what's up. And they have put this item on the selectmen's agenda, as I said, for coming up quickly. So, quick rundown. Pros of option one: it takes effect soon. You begin to see nitrogen reduction to all the ponds. Although the total load reduction performance will be low for most systems installed, there's no town vote required, there's no appropriation, and there's no plan required. The cons are, for a number of the coastal ponds, particularly the south coast ponds, the reduction is not going to meet the TMDL. For some of the ponds, you would exceed the nitrogen removal requirement. You'd be asking a lot of people to put in systems well beyond what the number needed to clean up the particular estuary. And there's no prioritization, there's no planning, there's no town control. It's not even feasible to comply. I'm not going to run through that again. It puts all the cost and responsibility on homeowners and on the Board of Health and Permitting. And if the town later needs to implement other actions, because we're not meeting the TMDLs even with all these IAs, it's going to be a group of homeowners are going to put in the pay twice. They're going to have to put in an IA system, and then we're going to come along and put sewers in, and they're going to have to pay for the sewer. Pros of option two: the town controls the planning. It will ultimately achieve a greater nitrogen load reduction, and the plan will be customized for each watershed. Not all owners in nitrogen-sensitive areas would have to upgrade their septic system within 7 years. Clearly, particularly on the south coastal estuaries and some of the Buzzards Bay areas, a number of homes in each of those estuaries will need to upgrade to IA. How those homes are selected or targeted, or how many, is all part of the watershed permit to be worked out over the next couple of years. Steve Rafferty's guess is instead of 13,000 homes that would have to upgrade to IA, it might be a number in the 2,000 to 4,000 range over a 20-year period. Again, to achieve the TMDLs. So, watershed permits. The cons are it's more effort and cost for the town. It's a slightly slower start to implementation. So that's the pros of the watershed. Then the cons are slower start. And then so the proposed next step, this board votes to recommend the select board file watershed permits notice of intent by January 7th, 2024. Or one of the other two options on that first slide, which I'll go back to if we need to. Town staff can submit the notice of intent. We've looked at what's required to do that. Amy feels confident that it's within her capabilities to get done. And then a town meeting article in 2024, most likely in the spring town meeting, possibly in the fall, to fund development of and or finalization of wastewater management plans for all the watersheds. And then apply for the watershed permits as soon as reasonably feasible, but before July 7th, 2030. You want to ask for questions?
Any questions from the committee?
I'd like to make one point that I recently was informed by a professional realtor in town that, to his dismay and the shock of the realtors, right after the state put this reg into effect, right earlier this month, they were notified by the group that supervises and regulates realtors that they must disclose to any potential property buyer in the town of Falmouth that's in these nitrogen-sensitive areas that this is a possible large-scale cost impact to the property they're considering to buy. It is a mandatory disclosure by realtors. So immediately, this law puts sort of a stigma on these 13 to 15,000 properties in Falmouth, should you or any other resident of those areas be looking to market your property. That's huge, and boy, that just emphasizes the hammer that this state regulation places on this town.
Any questions or comments from the audience?
The board of selectmen on Monday.
Just been advertised. Let me call you on it.
Excuse me, Peter McConomy, Public Works. When this gets presented to the public work, to the select board on Monday, will you be asking them to make a decision, or is this an informational for the select board to take on the recommendation?
I don't control the selectmen's agenda, but pretty much the presentation I just made, Amy will give you to them. It'll be their call whether they want to act upon it. What we're trying to do is get the water quality management committee and the board of health to make a recommendation to them. They may decide, or they may continue it for a week for additional comments. It's up to them. But they need to act on something in time for us to do the notice of intent. Or not act, and then it reverts back to 13,000.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh. Go ahead.
I'm Heather Doyle, I'm a resident of Falmouth. The town meeting article 2024 fund development, where would those funds come from? Existing money, or would they have to be raised?
It would either come from free cash or
So existing funds.
we would hope it would come out of free cash.
Because I have one of those IAs, and it's not. I mean, forget about the cost of putting it in. It costs me probably $60 a month in electricity, because it runs every half hour, off half hour, 24/7. And I have to have it, the first 2 to 3 years, you have to have it tested 4 times a year until it passes 2 consecutive in a row. Then you can go down to 3 times a year, and it's $480 each, no, over $500 each time they come out, in the beginning 4 times. I'm now down to 2 next month.
As it passed.
I've had the house for 8 years, it took a while for it to pass. It's finally passed, and 2 years ago I got down to twice. It was once, I'm back up to 4. Just once. It's expensive, just to let you know.
No, thank you for that. I mean, that's the reality of it.
But if it comes out of funding this development, I'm paying twice because I'm paying for the system. And I'm not even there in the wintertime, and it's still competitive, and I'm like,
Okay, I'm back at 2 questions. So, I don't know if this is an intelligence test, because I'm not the brightest bulb in the room here, but I think I heard you say that one of the options is to put in innovative alternative systems in 13,000 properties, and it wouldn't reduce nitrogen sufficiently for us to meet the PMGL, and eventually we'd have to sewer the town anyway, so those people would have to spend collectively, somehow we would have to fund $300 million or something like that, and then we have to put sewers in anyway. So how is that even an option, would be my question. But I think there's so much in this goulag, you have to simplify that one to those ridiculous terms to begin with the end in mind and say how we could never get there from here. But that's just, you don't need suggestions from me, but do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, you make a very good point.
So the other thing is, thinking about the 10 micrograms per liter that 40Bs are restricted to, if we took the option of giving, the notice in 2 years from now, and then put in innovative alternative systems only in new construction, would that actually allow 40Bs to reduce the output below 10 milligrams per liter, or could their composite system still deliver, as long as it's no more than 10 micrograms per liter, would it be acceptable, or might it be that?
Correctly
they'd still be the poor type of IA.
So, John Waterbury walked away. So this is it gets a little more complicated, Peter. I didn't want to get too far into it. This is a state regulation. Title V is a state regulation. 40Bs have to follow the state regulation, which would say that they have to have the best available control technology, okay, of the approved, okay. In Falmouth, the Board of Health has got their own regulation that pushes it below. The state right now has 19 on approved systems. There are some of those approved systems can perform at a better rate. The town of Falmouth has set a value that's lower than that. But as it stands right now, under 40B, state regulation would defer back to the best available control technology, and somebody would come in with a 19 milligram per liter system.
Demonstration of making adequate progress to 75% with existing IA systems. I wouldn't even do that.
I don't want to say yes or no. I tell you, the math of the number of homes in certain watersheds, if South Coast facing, if we don't put sewers in, and everybody's got to put the IA system in, and they perform at what's available now, we don't knock down enough nitrogen to meet TMDL for the South Coast ponds. I'm going to flip to Fiddler's Cove. Help me out here. 400 homes, 500 homes, roughly. Roughly 400 to 500 homes for Fiddler's Cove. Fiddler's Cove's in pretty good shape. If you were around for our presentation a year or so ago, we think if half the homes in Fiddler's Cove got to an IA system, they would meet the TMDL. But if we go to the everybody shall put it in, you'll have to, twice as many homes that need IAs for Fiddler's Cove would have to put in the IAs. So it's not just a one-size-fits-all. Some estuaries would pass with just getting more IAs in, but they're saying you have to put them in every place in the estuary.
So the last thing, slide on the slide here. If we look at provisional systems, like I guess you would put your diversion as a provisional system, and we're at the front end of trying to decide what that could contribute to solving the problem. And I've been listening, I lost listening to a discussion at the last meeting or the meeting before about a test of 90 households or whatever it would be. And so I was trying to figure out what we were trying to prove with that test. So are we trying to understand how much nitrogen, if we got committed individuals to do that test, how much nitrogen would that eliminate so we could calculate the impact on the total town? And if so, then that would take some time to get ready and to get set up and to get the data in order for it to be part of this decision. So thinking of the time frame that you presented here, how would what I just said about provisional systems, whether it's your diversion or any other one, what kind of time frame, how does that slot into the decision making?
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Made a leap inside here. So logic. Currently, the DEP does not, the whole urine diversion concept is not even yet at the first step inside the DEP's hierarchy of how things happen. Okay? So, it would have to, that somehow or other we'd have to get from where we're at right now through the plumbing board, through some testing at the test center, to a point where the DEP would then move it to a status where it could be considered. But until it gets to the approved status, okay, it's not, doesn't count inside their system for what you can use. So, having said all that, again, we've got to make watershed management plans. So, part of the exercise will be, I'll use Fiddler's Cove again. And I'm not, for anybody watching from Fiddler's Cove, I'm not saying this is what will happen in your watershed, but one could turn around and say, if we could get 100 homes into an IA system for Fiddler's Cove through some mechanism over a 20-year period, we could get another 50 homes under urine diversion, subject to it getting through an approval process over a 5 or 10-year period. So I don't see us being able to say in a watershed plan right now that we're covering urine diversion by year 5. We might turn around and say, potential for urine diversion by year 10 or year 15, predicated upon things happening from year 1 to year 5 through the DEP process. We could build a watershed plan like that and see how the DEP responds to it. The DEP's got several things they could do. When we were looking at composting toilets, they said, you can put a composting toilet in as long as you have a Title V system that meets Title V regulations. I have no idea what they're going to say if we say we want to put urine diversion.
We can have a 20-year plan, and if we count on urine diversion or some other provisional system coming into play 10 years from now, that could be part of the plan. We can definitely.
And Steve mentioned that there could be an adaptive component.
Okay.
Let me add one other thing. That, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we file the notice of intent coming January, we then have 5 years to do the plan and 20 years to implement. That's 25 years. 23 plus 25 is 2048, which is further out than the existing plan.
So now I kind of withdraw my negative comment about the test, because now that I understand that we don't need to have the results in hand to make a plan today, and that it could be part of a continuum of solutions that are evolving, it makes a lot of sense.
I want to add on to the concept of the watershed plan. Right now, we have a demonstration project that's going on in LaCroix Bay for aquaculture. There are 3 growers raising oysters. I don't want to get wrong here, but I think it's like 4 acres. 4 or 6.
Yeah, it's only 1.5 acres.
So we are similar arrangement to what the DEP wants to say in terms of that provisional demonstration, the whole thing. We are sort of there in aquaculture right now. For those of you that didn't watch the selectmen's meeting on last Monday night, Chuck Martinson came in and went to the selectmen and said, look, we're at a crossover point where do we go for another demonstration level, of a couple of acres, or where we've mapped out 200 acres, do we go get funding and everything else and identify a couple hundred acres that we would want to rotate to aquaculture in the estuaries? And that would incorporate into the watershed management plans. Would say, Florence Pond, we're looking to put X number of acres, and here's where we're at with our application to the Division of Marine Fisheries. Here's the people lined up that want to do this, and that is so many pounds of nitrogen that would come out.
Right now, I think a lot of people probably have the impression that it's the sewer people against, some other people. And really, it's everything all together. But you have to be able to, I would suggest it would be valuable to demonstrate, to get people together on saving our estuaries, that it all has to go.
On this decision, the way I phrase it myself is one possibility to do a stupid thing that won't work, is fairly expensive. Or you give yourself 25 years to do something that the group works out and collectively you think is the best thing to do.
Right. It's not hard for me to make the judgment between those.
Yeah, the state has been very good about allowing us to try stuff and find out if it works. And Kristen can correct me on this, but I think last year was a good year, and our 1.5 acres of oysters had a very, very good year, and they removed the amount of nitrogen that 39 Cape Cod Commission model residences on produce in a year. 1.5 acres of oysters. Now, we already know on the cheap, which was Little Pond, $20,000 a house to sewer under ideal conditions. So that's $800,000 worth of perhaps offset sewer costs that 1.5 acres of oysters can achieve. And I really think we need to be pushing economics of the model as much as anything else. And I hope that's going to be a driver. But to me, that's absolutely amazing number. $800,000 worth worth of potentially averted sewer construction.
At last Monday's meeting, the selectmen, after hearing Chuck make his presentation, said that they were in favor of him coming back with a more concrete proposal to move from another round of demonstration to an actual implementation of a real-world program. So that would involve staff, money, initial resources. But he had some financing that showed once you built the program, much like we built it the first time, that it's self-sustaining.
I mean,
They are.
you hear all about dumping the nuclear waste and what it's gonna do to our aquaculture, and then, you know, I don't know, how this colors the oyster industry.
But at this point, the decision is not between oysters, sewers, good IAs, and urine diversion, eco toilets, and PRBs. It's between the group of the best of all of those, as applied in each location, versus doing a very simply described stupid thing that won't work everywhere. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Right, well, Tom, don't you have some, these oyster growers had no problem selling their
Oh,
oysters.
yeah, no. The first year we were in full production was the COVID year. The restaurants closed, and that's our market for oysters. It's the high-end raw bar trade. You know, we're not growing oysters in Falmouth that are going to end up with somebody's oyster stew or oyster stuffing for Thanksgiving. They're going to restaurants as far away as Florida. My son's a chef in Florida, and right. But yeah, we can do
Kind
more.
of back to the conversation. Okay. Are there other people that want to comment? If not, can I get a motion? Come back to the first slide.
Yeah, the first option is the one I think
You can
Steve is
take the top-
endorsing.
you can take the top line. Take the top line.
Yeah, you know that well. Yeah, you take it. You read it.
I move that we recommend the select board file water permit notice of intent by January 7th, 2024.
And I'll second Steve's motion.
We have a motion, a second, any conversation, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a couple of meetings back, we had a draft letter to go to town meeting members about the need for continuing with the program we have. I'm going to preface this a little bit by saying that what I would like is for every member of this board, both present and not present, to agree, once we have put this letter together, to take a select group of town meeting members by precinct, and to reach out to them, make sure they got the letter, that they've read the letter, they understand the value and need for what we're doing, and to answer any questions they may have.
A great idea.
Okay? So, expect at the next meeting, or shortly thereafter, that there will be a list of names and precincts to parcel out and divvy up. Okay? Turn it over to you.
I'm working on it.
And I believe this letter got circulated. This letter came in, there were a number of comments. It got edited, and then the edited version got sent to all board members, asking them, so we didn't get into the public meeting watershed, to only respond back to Kristen with your comments. And or me, I'll tell you I didn't really read many of them, because English is my second language.
What's the first?
Engineering.
Body English.
Body English, yeah. So I believe you received comments from several people and have worked on it.
Some of them 5 minutes before the meeting.
My apologies.
So basically what I did, yes,
You also sent this revised version to us yesterday or the day before.
yes, but
So if we've all read it.
he added a couple of little things in
since then.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Tom
5
was late
minutes
to the
before
party, but he still jumped into the pool.
But basically the majority of the edits were very, very, very minor, just wording changes, nothing that really changed the content of anything. So Tom had suggestion, basically to rewrite the tone of the first paragraph. So that's this purple in here. So those are Tom's suggestions on that. All of the other, I added the couple of comments that we got that you guys saw, which were either discussion points or people's stream of conscious thoughts. Whether you want to discuss those is up to you. I believe some about whether to include Buzzards Bay Coalition's standings on beds 14 and 15, the 20-year plan. But the additions, corrections are marked in track changes. As I said, all very minor that went through there. The biggest thing Tom did was that first paragraph. So I'm just going to scroll through those quickly. That was one of the comments about whether the coalition has changed their positions on beds 14 and 15 in favor of the outfall.
So let's stop right there. Mm-hmm. Are you okay with that language?
I'm reading it for the first time.
No, but I want to go through. The only hurry here is I want to get a letter that's a good letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, can we perhaps have another round of send around what you have? Yeah. I had some changes. The one thing that I am concerned a little bit about that's substantive is if we promise that we're going to do this, get this outfall permitted in 4 to 7 years, and we don't meet that deadline, I think that's a little optimistic, and it might be nice to give ourselves a little more latitude. 4 to 10 years. I know you don't. I know you think you can do it, Steve. But what if you don't? And town meeting says, "Hey, you promised us 7 years, and you haven't done it yet."
I would accept that. We believe it will take from 4 to 7 years to get an outfall permitted, but it could take up to 10 years. Okay.
Yeah, something that gives us.
But I think Ken is asking for what if it's refused?
Oh, I don't. No, I'm not asking for that. No, I don't think it's going to be. I think we'll be able to get it.
It's not unreasonable to discuss what your parachute.
No, it's not. It's not unreasonable to do that. But that's not what I was saying. I believe that it will be approved at some point. I just am not as aggressively optimistic as Steve that it'll happen in 7 years.
I wish John was here because John thinks 7 years is.
It says we believe, not that we are.
I know.
It's a hope.
I know. My experience in town meeting is you don't want to be on the defensive. If you deliver ahead of time, great.
I also think town meeting has the right and likelihood to ask, what if they don't like the outfall?
Well, that's
the second choice.
So there will be an article in the November town meeting. Come before this board before it goes to the selectmen, looking for money to do borings, as well as to do certain other scientific elements that have to happen, Division of Marine Fisheries and others, as well as money for the USGS to do an evaluation of the impact of the Saginaw Lake. So that's a town meeting vote. So this is, we can work on this thing here that that we believe that the town meeting agrees to fund the next step in the outfall permitting process for additional studies and information that will take from 4 to 7 years or upwards of 10 years. Something along that line.
Just give us some wiggle room. I'm not worried about Steve's concern because everything I hear from the town, nobody wants this in their watershed. We got to get it out of their watersheds into a well-flushed region of the coastal waters.
Steve, can I suggest, in the interest of maybe efficiency or something, that you appoint a 2 or 3 person subcommittee that can sit down with your FaceTime and do the final wordsmithing of this? Because we're really close with this. I really like.
I think we have to limit it to 2.
2 is it?
I I haven't been to the town clerk to confirm that.
Anyway, I just, you know,
We just send our comments to Kristen and let
You
her.
don't have to stick them all in here.
Yeah.
You have to go
Yeah.
through.
I'm fine with the working committee if we can confirm that it's 3 for town.
The working groups,
Town clerk.
the working groups have always been three.
Right.
Yeah.
Less than the forum.
Yeah. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I just want to check with the town clerk to be sure. Okay. So, who would want to be on such a working?
I would be happy
I
to.
will. I talked to Ken.
Do you want to get on it too, Steve?
Yeah, I think Steve should be on it. He's looking for work, right? Okay.
Go through those. Now that we've interrupted, why don't you just go through the where you cut in changes and what some of them have been.
As I said, it's mostly wordsmithing. Meaningful progress on restoration will be further delayed for all of the impaired estuaries, so not just highlighting the South Coast one, incorporating the town as a whole.
This right now. This is
We
for
can barely
us.
see it ourselves.
No, he's asking if the public's supposed to be getting on this letter. I've been treating this as a letter from this board to town meeting members, but I will allow at the end here for a comment period like I do on everything.
Yeah, I think it's important, transparency.
It is 2 and a very tiny couple of lines at the top because we were not able to collectively get it to 2 pages.
That's what typesetting.
So, yeah, let's suggest, I'm going to suggest that we quit sort of bitsying this right now and
Sounds good.
move it to whatever approved working group can
So-
come up. Right now, tentatively, it's 3 of us.
But I do agree. It's close. It just
Yeah.
a little wordsmith.
And, and just to reframe this one more time, this is intended to develop support for funding the design of the sewers on the Upper T-Ticket Peninsula. It's not intended to be for or against any other things in other portions of the watershed. To the extent that there are other articles, whether it's the outfall article or a urine diversion pilot program, whatever else, a similar letter may or may not be drafted for it. But this is really to why are we asking for design money? Why is it appropriate at this time in terms of the overall program to stay on that schedule? Okay, so
I agree.
with that, I'll open it up to comments from the audience. I'm going to start in the front and then the second.
Is there any way that this letter, after it's finally edited and final form, can be distributed to the residents of the impacted areas? Because there's a lot of confusion, false information, anxiety about this whole story. And when many people who don't really understand what's being proposed, why, how much, when, and it seems like a letter like this would help at least provide some.
That's the
What-
intent
well,
to
no,
go to town meeting.
The town meeting, but let me suggest there's no reason this shouldn't be published in the enterprise.
I was going to make the same suggestion.
Over our byline. And I would think that would at least meet publication and widespread
I agree.
seeing it. So I would suggest that happen for sure. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, we were planning on having at least one member of the committee at each of the precinct meetings before town meeting to answer any questions that may come up with the development of this idea. But our idea, I think, and I'm speaking for myself, but I hope for the committee, is we wanted the letter to stand on its own. Because there is, I mean, I get calls, I said, people stop me at breakfast and say, what's going on with this, what happened here, and everything else. And so this was an attempt to clear that up. But yeah, your point is good, but it just occurred to me while you were saying that, John, that we would just try to get it into the enterprise. Yeah.
Oh, you'll be next.
Kim?
to pass to achieve, the sufficient, I guess, 2/3 vote. And as I wrote in the Enterprise shortly afterwards, I took that as a vote of not necessarily no confidence in this committee's plans, but people having a lot of doubts about the plans, and perhaps it wasn't presented as well as it could have been, whatever. And I also said in my letter that I think the town needs to have an all-of-the-above approach, including sewers, septics, urine diversion, permeable reactive barriers, aquaculture, etc., and expressed the hope that we could work together to achieve our common goals of protecting our waters. I also contacted Amy Lowell and asked to have the opportunity to meet with her, which I did in early May, and said that I didn't want to spend time fighting against the Water Quality Management Committee plan. I wanted to work with Amy and with the town to achieve sensible solutions. And I suggested at that meeting that perhaps we should do a joint article that includes a urine diversion pilot project with your proposal for the sewer. And so, lo and behold, then what happens is, you propose an article that includes the urine diversion pilot project. And so this letter that has been drafted, and I understand it's coming from the committee, which is totally appropriate, I'm very interested in knowing whether it mentions the urine diversion pilot project. You seem to imply just now that it does it.
It does.
Well, touches on it briefly, but we have yet to receive proposals
Right.
from the Mass Test Center, and
Right.
the articles have to go for selectmen in August.
I understand.
So this board only has so many meetings.
So I'm working with, and met with the test center folks this morning, to talk about their pilot project design. It's in process. So I would ask that the Falmouth Pond Coalition and other folks who are interested and have a stake in this letter. I'm very interested in seeing this letter. I'm very interested in seeing what it says about a urine diversion pilot project, how the urine diversion pilot project is being described, or anything related to it. I'm very interested in it. Certainly have a big stake in it. I guess I'll also ask, given that you need to have the article into the town by August 25th, you don't have to have this letter out by August 25th. You have 3 months before the November town meeting in order to campaign on behalf of your article. So I don't understand the connection between getting the warrant article finalized and getting a letter out by August 25th. I don't see that connection. But my main point is that I would respectfully request the opportunity to review this letter and see what it says about urine diversion, the pilot project, which you have said you are going to include a urine diversion pilot project. So I would just respectfully request the opportunity to review the letter and submit any comments about it.
So, this board has not yet taken any voter action on urine diversion articles or outflow articles. Those are going to make it in front of this board in the future, hopefully before the selectmen have to act. We met with the test center. I don't know what you've been doing with the test center. We met with the test center and outlined what we felt was an appropriate program and asked them for a proposal. We have not yet seen a proposal. So we can't, at this moment in time, talk to a specific urine diversion pilot program other than we've put a request in to get some feedback from the test center, okay? I'm speaking only for myself and not for this board. I don't see the need to lump the 3 articles together for the outfall, sewer design, and urine diversion. They are all components of things that we are looking at, evaluating, and hope to do. But I think each one of those articles should stand or fall on its own. If we don't get a 2/3 vote, and it includes this urine diversion, there is no urine diversion program. It sits on its own, it's an up or down vote. Okay?
Wait, so I'm just confused. What was described in the enterprise, and I think you wrote in your note to me, was that a urine diversion pilot project is going to be included in the article that is going to propose the $4.5 million to design and permit the 811 homes in the T-Ticket, Acapesca, and Maravista Peninsula. Is that right? Or is it going to, or are you talking about a separate article?
I don't recall writing that.
Well, I said it in the enterprise. The enterprise said you're going to have an article that includes a urine diversion pilot project. It's that one article. This is the first I'm hearing it, that maybe
Somebody must have changed their mind. Let's focus on the current state is that they're separate articles.
Well, yeah.
I don't know what happened in the spring.
But it's the new article that you're proposing, the article that you're proposing.
In this letter?
No, not the letter, what you're going to go to town meeting with.
I don't have anything.
But assuming that MassTech and we're working with them comes to you with a urine diversion pilot project that you feel makes sense, do you intend to include it with your embedded in this article, or are you talking about proposing a separate article?
Again, speaking only for myself, because it's not come before this board to talk about how they feel about articles and how we want to approach it. We get to make recommendations to the select. So this board at some point will either recommend that we support one article, 2 articles, or 3 articles, depending on what we have in front of us. What we have so far is an article for the design of the T-Ticket sewer. Okay? That's what we have so far. And this letter was to go out to town meeting members to say, we're looking for their support for funding the design of sewers in the T-Ticket area. We do not have a proposal for urine diversion yet. Okay? We don't even have a proposal yet in front of us for the scientific next steps on the outflow. Again, we're waiting for that to arrive. We've got a couple of meetings between now and the end of August or the first week of September where these things are likely to have to be before the selectmen. Hopefully everything comes in. If it doesn't come in, it rolls to the next town meeting. That's the way it works.
So again, I guess my question is, there's getting warrant articles submitted, and then there's a letter. I don't understand the connection between the two. 3 months.
Well, the connection is that the letter is in support of the article, so you've got to have a clear idea of what's in the article if you're going to write a letter supporting it.
I understand, and you'll have a proposed urine diversion pilot project in the next week or so. I thought one of the reasons you were including the urine diversion pilot project in the article to support the sewering was to build support for the sewering project. I thought maybe I was just wrong.
No,
that's okay.
I think that was one of the reasons you did it.
We're starting to get argumentative, and I don't like to do that. Yeah. Right now, could be 1 article, 2 articles, or 3 articles.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. Okay.
Steve, can I just?
I think this Stephen is here.
Okay. I'm also just speaking for myself, not the committee, because everything Steve said is correct. Personally, I like the idea of 3 separate articles. I think it's a luxury. It always drives me nuts when Congress, the federal level, has these giant 2,500-page things that no one can read that has everything in it from agriculture to fighter jets. You either are for this bunch of stuff or against it. Here, the town is small enough to have the luxury of looking at each individual item and saying, I want this, I don't want that, I do want that.
Well, I was just going to say, I originally had the same thought as you, that we could strengthen support for this article by including urine diversion. There was clearly sentiment at town meeting in favor of it. But Steve makes a good point. If this is a Prop 2.5 override and requires 2/3, then in a sense, your diversion is at more jeopardy than if it stood alone, out of free cash or something like that. So just something to consider. But I mean, what?
We are considering.
Yeah.
We're definitely considering.
So what would your preference be?
I don't know. I had just been operating under the assumption that that there was going to be a warrant article to support the sewering that was going to include the urine diversion power project. That's what I understood from the note that I got from you, Stephen. I also understood it from the enterprise, the way the enterprise is structured. So I may just have been, I may just have gotten
Yeah, I think the best path forward is for you to organize and word the article, and then as soon as practical for you, come to us and ask for our endorsement. And I can't speak for the committee, but my guess is that there will certainly be endorsement for a pilot project. Not having any idea what the cost is, the timeline, or anything else. But Steve's point, which I hadn't thought about before at all, if you package it all together and different parts of it are disliked by different people and the whole thing fails, then they all go down together, joined separately. So anyway, that's my thought on it. Peter, thank you for coming in.
Are there other comments? Yes, ma'am.
I'm a town meeting member, and I'm also co-president of the Teachers Association. And just addressing this letter and not even knowing the verbiage that's in there, almost 3 pages, I have to tell you, we get inundated when there are hot topics coming before town meeting. We get inundated with letters, with emails, with this, with that, and oftentimes, talking to other people, they just get turned off. So my fear is you have to keep whatever you're putting out to town meeting members very simple and sweet, succinct, and to the point. Bullet items. So somebody can look at it and go, oh, okay, yeah, I get that, moving on. Case in point, and I'll give you a perfect example. Social media. People were commenting about what's going into where the Christmas tree shop was. They're tearing up plants, blah, 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 blah. So it started off, all these Trader Joe's. So finally, a town meeting member said, and made a post, and very rightly so, for all of you town meeting members that voted the zoning article at town meeting, you should be well aware of the rezoning and what is planned for that area. So that was like an aha moment for me that, sometimes if you complicate things with a lot of words and a lot of verbiage, people's eyes glass over and you lose them. The simpler you can be, the fewer words, bullet items, I highly recommend that.
The working group here.
Yes, definitely.
If I might address that, and also what the gentleman in the front row had mentioned earlier about people are getting confused. It's the same thing. I've been getting a lot of comments as a new member of this board and a resident of Falmouth Heights because, Falmouth Heights looks like the best place. And I'm wholly in favor of the outfall fight, and I'm the apostle of it. But people have a lot of questions, and I've been collecting them. And, I've got a little list of bullet questions that people have about specifics on outfall, sewering in general, and other parts of this project. We have a toolbox of things that are going to be part of our watershed management plan that we're going to ask the selectmen to push forward with the state to prevent the hammer from falling down on the IA systems. And in the toolbox, of course, is sewering. In the toolbox will be urine diverting toilets and shellfish and permeable reactive barriers and a whole bunch of other things that we may not have heard of. It's part of the toolbox that you tell the state, look, here's our plan for the next 25 years or even longer for solving Falmouth's problem. But you got to keep it simple. Now, the letter I'm not on the subcommittee, but I would suggest to them that they hear what's being said from Cheryl in particular, that it seems backwards, but you start off with your conclusion. Bing, bing, bing. Here's 3 points we're trying to make about this specific article. And then you can have 2 pages or 3 pages of elaboration, but start off with a conclusion. We wish to have this article passed because, hey, it's a state plan that we have approved by the state. We've submitted it. They've approved it. It's part of our going forward watershed management plan. We darn well better fund it and start doing it. They're going to say, well, but you're full of beans. You're not committed. You're not even doing what you said you were going to do last year, so we're not going to approve your plan. Put in your IAs, and then look out, folks. So start off with conclusions. 2, 3, whatever the key points are, and then you can say, in explanation of these, because people can read that or not, but hopefully they'll look at the 3 bullet points you start with. Start with the conclusions. And to the gentleman's concern, and I share that there's a lot of confusion. We together as the committee and other people bring these comments, discuss them, come up with concise, brief answers to them, and submit that either, certainly to the enterprise as a op-ed editorial or whatever. Here's things people are asking about sewers. We have a marketing problem. Here is what we're trying to do as a program. We need to explain clearly to the customers or our potential customer, that is the town people, particularly town meeting, but all the citizens. Here's what we need to do and wish to do. And here's our answers to some of your concerns and questions, whether it's about urine diverting or IA systems or outfall pipe, why, what, and what are we doing about the estuaries? Hey, there's a whole bunch of things there. We need to bring it down and be concise to answer that gentleman's concern, because it's very valid.
Could you please send that draft letter to us? Could we please get that draft letter so we can read it ourselves? Because I can't read anything from it. So I can read it home and think about what I'm doing.
Can I ask Ms. Lee? We just all identified that this letter is not going where we want it to go. We just appointed a working committee to rewrite it and redraft it. Let them do their work, and then we'll make that available as our new draft to look at. Because we give you a letter, you can start commenting on it, but it's not what we're going to be working on. Okay? It's a reasonable request to ask to see it, but we're sort of withdrawing it right now because of where we're at. Okay?
Because it is a work in progress.
If you want this, I don't have a problem sending it to you, but it's not where we're going to wind up with. Yeah. All right.
One clarifying question. So the sewering article that you were considering putting forth to the Board of Selectmen, is it designed for the sewer, or is it design, permitting, construction, discharge?
You just combine 2 things together.
Yeah.
Okay, there's three subject areas. One is to get some money to do the next steps on the outfall. Okay? That's here. Then there's another article to get funding to go forward with the design and permitting of the sewers for the upper T-ticket peninsula. And then there's the potential urine diversion pilot program.
My question was
No construction.
your second point. So for
You
the
did not
T-ticket,
use the word construction.
okay, that's why I heard design, but I didn't hear permitting.
It's designed and permitting.
It's design and permitting. How much more is the permitting aspect of that article than the design aspect of that article?
Yes.
I
I
mean,
can tell you don't get much for $4.5 million anymore.
I mean, it's primarily wetlands, state highway, and SRF. There might be another permit there, but fundamentally. Oh yeah, let me just check. Oh, I see where you're going. Yeah, we would have to get a modification of the permit for the West Falmouth treatment plants.
My question is that permitting part of this article?
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. Yep.
So I guess let's take this opportunity to follow up on the fact that I think the coalition sent a letter to you a couple of weeks ago with concerns over the SMAS report for Heron Brook and its capacity to take additional wastewater discharge. So we are looking at that. We are going to share the results of our review with you as soon as we can.
You indicated you were going to get your own independent review on it. One of the comments you made was about the nitrogen rate, and it was pretty clear when Eric was here and gave his presentation that salt marshes that get basically 100% flushing have different nitrogen loading capacity than estuary ponds. So you made a comment to the same point that a couple other people did about why is the number for an estuary pond one target number, and why is it different for Herring Brook and it's different for Herring Brook because it's a fully flushed salt marsh.
So I'm going to propose that we will provide the committee with our view. There may be some fundamental differences on the two approaches, but we will get that and share that with you. So I just wanted to the extent that is in the letter, wanted to bring that up.
Unless there's more, I'll go and move to the next agenda item. So we've been meeting on Monday nights. We moved the start time around a little bit. It turns out that on Wednesday evenings, the Board of Selectmen's meeting is regularly available to us. We're back to the 4 to 6 time. Right?
Yeah, 4 or 4:30. If Concom ever moves back to in person, we will have a tight hard time.
I just wanted to not make a decision necessarily, but put out there. In the past, one of the reasons we did Monday nights is I and another person had some conflicts on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Nobody wanted to meet on Friday. So if people prefer meeting at a different time, new members.
This is fine for me.
Yeah, this typically works for me.
The only issue with this is getting FCTV coverage is limited because in the second room it can get easier. Right. And the setup here is already set up.
Well, what would be present 2 or more well-defined alternatives? One is the status quo.
Yeah.
Now, what's the other alternative?
You look at different who's in what rooms and everything.
So if you say Monday nights, you have a lot of conflicts between people wanting to go to the select board meeting, board of health meeting. So you get a lot of people who get torn between what meetings they can and want to attend. So I know I've had discussions with a lot of people who say, why do you meet right up against the select board? Or John has board of health and fitness. So that's where Monday isn't necessarily a good time. I did check with town hall for this late afternoon, early evening. Wednesday is the best one for regular schedule. So
well, that's advantage and disadvantage. I'm asking for the alternative. If there isn't one, then
the alternative is to stay on Monday night or move to a Wednesday.
The day doesn't affect me. It's the starting at 4. It's just too early.
So let's stay on Monday and we'll just bounce around between Monday
Well, what's the disadvantage of Wednesday? Like at 4:30?
Because I think Kristen's saying if we can't start at 4:30.
we can start at 4:30. Yes. So right now, Concom is virtual, so they are not in the select board meeting room. Should they, when they ever go back in person, we will have a hard stop because they start at 7, so we have to be out. Typically, the courtesy is half an hour before.
Well, 7, okay.
Right.
But that could still work. 4:30
Yes.
to 6:30 could work.
Yeah, I would suggest, let's take a shot at Wednesdays at 4:30. Is that late enough?
I have no issue with it. Yeah, as long as it's 4:30, I don't care what day of the week it is. Well, I'd rather not do Friday.
I'm very flexible as slowly retired. I think, we got to get away from Monday. We can't have John having to leave.
I agree with that.
And we also are missing our select board liaison, who is a key part of all of our efforts going forward. So I know Doug is, a very dedicated guy and wants to be here, but he's got, his first priority has to be select board. So I think we gotta get away from the Mondays.
So let's
Try Wednesday. I think I'm in favor of that.
Do Wednesday at 4:30, that's fine.
I think we should take a shot at Wednesday at 4:30. I'll make it a
So
formal motion.
Second. Okay, so. We can, I don't know that we need to have a vote, because what we'll do is, we'll talk about, an overall meeting schedule. I think right now, electronic calendar.
August 30th is the next one, which happens to be Wednesday.
Well, there you go.
There it is.
That was where we're headed to, yeah.
Both
Okay.
of you accepted that.
Yes, we did. Okay, I'm putting it on my calendar right now. 4:30, Selectmen's meeting room. Select board meeting room, excuse me.
And just a heads up, we expect the selectmen are going to want things, like, probably at their meeting. What we're guessing right now is there's a meeting sometime in the first or second week of September.
Yeah.
Where the articles have to be put in. So we would be covering the articles.
Yeah. Good.
Right? That was good.
Yes.
All right, the next one is reports of members and staff. Ken and I went up to Brattleboro, Vermont, the Richard Institute, and Ken, if you're comfortable with someone of that trip.
Okay, so we were curious as to how the urine processing and urine diversion, collection and so forth worked. So we wanted to go to the Richard Institute to see in person. We discovered that they have a vibrant program. All of their urine collection is voluntary and local. So one thought that I had early on was, is this a possible place that if we started generating some quantity of urine, we could take that urine? And they were inclined to say, no, you need to find a closer site. And then we asked them, well, do you have a list of closer sites? And they said, not really. So that was kind of where that ended up. We did see what's involved in the pasteurization process. Surprisingly simple. I think they bring the urine to 80 degrees centigrade for like a minute or two. It's not long. They use this urine that they collect as fertilizer, and they even have a nice yellow tank truck with yellow hubcaps, I noticed, to spray it on the fields. The other thing that I saw that I was quite impressed with, actually, and I don't know how you felt, Steve, but the number of different urine diverting toilets, models that they had, a lot of them, several of them, I would say, look quite a bit like conventional toilets, and I thought would be very adaptable to installation in just about anybody's house, including at least one that was sort of a mix of being a conventional water flush toilet, but it also funneled the urine into a separate container. So then, the biggest issue that, as Steve and I drove down and talked about what we'd seen, that we discussed was, well, what do you do? If we were to try to implement this in Falmouth, there has to be a place to take this urine that's being produced. The short-term solution might simply be to use a septic hauler and go around and take it to the wastewater plant. And that would at least, while it wouldn't achieve the goal of conserving all the nutrients and putting it on, agricultural fields, it would make it unnecessary to build sewer infrastructure out to those homes that might be in the northern sections of watersheds where we do not intend to sewer. So I could certainly see that as being a partial solution to achieving our watershed management plan, nitrogen reduction, TMDL. And that's kind of where we are right now. I mean, I agree with the general sense that I think the committee has that this is not going to be a widely implemented solution, 13,000 homes would produce 2.5 million gallons of urine a year. That's 1,000 septic tanker loads, 3 a day that have to go somewhere. So, and it would require obviously retrofitting all those homes. So, that's kind of the other side of the argument. But I certainly, I think we came away feeling that this could be a viable additional source of nitrogen reduction in the watershed. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary.
That's great.
And by the way, I have lots of photos of urine diverting toilets if anyone wants to see them.
What kind of crops were they putting this on? Foodstuffs or more decorative flowers?
That's a good question, and it's not one I asked.
I don't think we asked that directly. Their site talks about primarily they've been using non-edible, but they've been doing some work with more edible, and they're in partnership with at least 1 or 2 universities looking at uptake and
They did. They did talk about passing the urine through activated charcoal to further purify it, to get rid of pharmaceuticals and PFAS compounds. So they mentioned that they were looking into that.
Now, the collection tank. Did you get a feel of people putting it inside their house, outside the house?
So they have all these little 5-gallon cubitainers and various other collection devices, and then they aggregate it into totes, which I learned about 250-gallon large cubitainers, if you will. So that's kind of where they hold the urine.
they were collecting the urine for a little bit of a diverse. Some people are one-off homeowners. They're operating under an agricultural permit. They mentioned that they had a number of installations that sounded like they were either bars or breweries or restaurants. So they were easily configured to gather the urine in a place like that. I found that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Something for food for thought about where would be easy to gather urine from.
In copious quantities, like Gillette Stadium or something.
Right.
Like that. But the
Liam,
I had done some right. I had done a little research as I meandered through the internet and things, and a woman at the previous meeting had mentioned a particular brand of urine diverting toilets as similar to what you're describing. It looks like a regular toilet, and it's a 2-in-1 type of thing. And
the one I tested out was a Laufen, and it's a water flush toilet. It's simple, looks exactly like a conventional toilet, but it's just designed to kind of
it has a separate discharge for urine, and another one for what might be mixed waste. And the price I saw, because it was all European stuff, was about 550 euros for that particular model. So depending on conversion rate, somewhere $700. I found other ones that sell for $5,000 and $10,000, and others that are about $250. I happened to talk to a master plumber. What do you think of him? He said, "You don't want one." I said, "No, I don't want one, but have you had any exposure to him?" And he said, "Well, you're going to have a real problem with anything like that. In Falmouth, the tank will have to be outside. It will require probably separate venting." And he just ballparked and said, and he's a very knowledgeable guy, master plumber, and is studying this stuff in his spare time, figuring about 2 men for a full day to install the whole system. Take the old toilet out, put the new one in, put the tank and all that. And so we're talking $2,000, $2,500 at current rates.
Retrofitting is tough, I think.
It's very tough, and it's kind of a nebulous area as far as what the town plumbing inspector will allow. He said very definitely they would want it external tank. So you're talking burying something or having it on a stand and pumping it to it. So there is some complexity, and Hildy mentioned earlier about the contaminants that are in the wastewater stream, and you touched on it, PCBs. PFAS, all these, what they call contaminants of emerging concern that are present in urine. So you need if you're going to use them on food products, you've got a whole new bunch of issues.
It's good that you've done the research.
Yes.
Okay? So usually reports of members are fairly specific to something. But I have been concerned that we probably need to set up some sort of urine diversion working group as well to get things happening. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you'd be interested in
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
We can find a couple of other people that want to participate in looking at, as you say, the impediments, whether it's plumbing code or water health or whatever, and the cost. So we have some understanding of the hurdles that are in front of us as we try to.
As we look at this pilot program and then further on.
And you can't have more than 3. Steve is going to check on it. You can't have more than 3 committee members on it, but you can have members from the general public.
Yeah.
And working groups have to come.
I wonder who would be interested.
To agree to. Okay. So, on a similar matter to the urine diversion, I got a call today from Dave Vieira, who has been approached by folks here in Falmouth, thinking that this committee should consider at a point, either late August or early September, visiting Hildy and Earl's facility to see more firsthand. It's not on the agenda tonight. It'll probably put it on the agenda for August 31st for consideration. I just want to give you a heads up that that request was put in to me, and I told Dave Vieira that I would flag it tonight relative to having gone up to Brattleboro. And then we'll look at dates or times that might work in September. And Hildy and Earl, if you could flag to me dates in September that might work.
Earlier in August, so that we have time before.
Well, we can put it over to bring it before this board. I have to get it onto the agenda. We'll meet next meeting towards the end of August. I mean, you could send to me and Kristen dates and times that you'd let people come look at it, and we'll push it out to the rest of the committee and see what happens. Earl?
Yeah, I have some quick answers to your questions. Richard Institute gets into farmers who grow hay. They give 1,000 gallons per acre on a hay field. They get twice as much hay if they do that. Where they would put urine from a Cape Cod, if you had 190 homes on a pilot project with 180 people, you have to spread that on 18 acres. 90 homes is 180 people, it's going 18 acres. We propose that it be trucked off to a farm just over the bridge. It has 18 acres, which is not very big. The cost would be $17 per person per year to truck a person's urine per year off the Cape. That's the cost that now the sewer trucks sludge away, all the way to Princeton, Rhode Island to incinerate it. The cost is extremely small compared to that. And about the pharmaceuticals, Rich Earth Institute has had university studies done that shows that the pharmaceuticals put on the soil of crops and vegetables and hay fields are destroyed by the biological activity in the soil. It does not go into food crops, it does not go into the soil permanently, it does not go into the water under the soil. And finally, there is no PFAS in urine. The body does not put PFAS into urine. They are retained in the body. Your kidneys are not able to take them out and put them in the urine. That's some of the answers.
Do you have a suggestion on how we would identify such a farm? And the related question is, what about Coonamessett Farm or something like that?
They would not want us to put urine on the surface of the ground on the Cape. They have concerns and worries. They don't trust anybody about that sort of thing. If we took it off the Cape, we wouldn't have that problem at all.
So it's okay with Mass DEP to put it on farms on the other side of the canal?
I have no idea.
It doesn't make sense to you?
Well, they're not watersheds that have these special problems.
We would prefer, of course, to have it local and to have our urine be a substitute of synthetic fertilizers that are already being used. So that's our ideal. So if that can fly with MSDP, it would be great. We have to show scientific papers also to show that urine is absorbed by plants in a very different way than synthetic fertilizers. It's very easy to go and absorb immediately. So there's not much less runoff or loss to the groundwater than synthetic fertilizers. So yes, of course we would love it. And it's very, very few acres that we need. It also be put in pores, wherever. If that's okay, sure, we'll do that to close. We use the 70 acres because that is what the sludge is now being taken away. So 70 miles is taken away from Falmouth to the incinerator. So we use that 70 miles to compare what it would cost to move urine that direction compared to sludge. So that's the only reason why we took 70. And within 70 miles, there are hundreds of hay farms and grass farms, which would be the most applicable immediately. It could be used for anything else, but that would be the most useful. It doesn't have to be that way. We could put it on golf courses, we could put it on play fields, we could put it saw, whatever, sure. And we don't need many acres, especially for the pilot project. It gives us years to think of and find all these farmers. As soon as you tell people that they can have their urine fertilizer, it used to be for free. We can give it for free because right now sludge costs money to get incinerated, which is not for free. So if we can give those urine fertilizers for free to farmers, there will be farmers ready to go. And they found out at Vermont that more farmers that want it once they got it than there is urine. So now they have to pay for it, and they're still willing to pay for it. So we have to do one step at a time, and just we have only 50 votes. We only need a few acres to do that, because we have to calculate, as the project said, the draft report last week said, we only are home 2/3 of the time, so we don't get 100% of all our urine from every household. So we calculated that all in, and it's only very few acres we need. So I'm sure that we can get it as a farmer to do it for free, except that fertilizer for free.
Thank you, Hilary. We were just doing reports of members and staff. We've gone off into all the pluses and minuses of urine diversion. You just reiterated what you said at 2 other meetings to this board before. I think we've all heard that, okay? We appreciate your viewpoint, but I want to know, are there any other reports of members and staff at this time? Steve? Okay. Ken?
Okay, thanks.
All right. I'd like to move on to doing the voting the minutes. The primaries. Oh, I do have one sort of side thing on the urine diversion. I have to. At the last meeting, people said they want time to provide comments on the report that got prepared. There were written comments from both Hildy and from Earl. I said I would wait to hear back from how much more time you needed for comments before we proceeded forward. Do you feel that you need more time to provide comments, or have we got all the comments we're going to get? Huh?
How many people got this draft report that could comment on it? Did you get the draft report? That's my question. Who saw the draft report?
We presented it to this committee. We presented it to everybody that was in attendance. I trust that if you had people that you wanted to read the report, including the gentleman up in Brattleboro who said he had it, that we would be receiving comments if we need to receive it. And I'm leaving it. I don't think it's up to this board to try to distribute a draft report to as many people out there that may want to comment on it. I have people that sit here at every meeting that seem passionate about urine diversion, and I don't want to cut off the opportunity for comments, but I'd like to set some time certain. I asked last time, how much time do you need to make comments? I'll hold it open. Maybe at the next meeting you can say you're all happy, and we'll try to finalize that report as we move on into the pilot stage, the pilot proposal. Okay. So as we're at it, just wanted to make sure that you knew that it was open and not, closed. Just waiting for comments. Okay, minutes of the prior meeting. Tom?
Yes.
Just so everybody's aware, Because Tom is a fastidious reader, I have been.
Too
I've
fastidious.
been asking Tom to read the draft minutes to see if there's anything in there, but that doesn't preclude comments from anybody else.
And I did miss something in my first run through. Christian, at the top of page 4.
Wait, what date are you on?
We're going
No, that's what I'm going to tell you. Well, I've got on both. June 26th, that first paragraph, it says to became operational. There should be an AL after operation. And that's it for that. I'm going to ask for someone else to move that they be accepted.
Wait, which?
June 26th.
No.
Okay, so
June 26th is the one we're commenting on.
I'm going to hand the chairmanship to you so that I can make a motion. I'll move the chairman to make a motion. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to accept the minutes of June 26, 2023 as Scribner's error corrected by.
Yeah.
Is there a second? Second.
If you have seconds, you were on the board at that time.
Well, I'll second.
Any discussion?
All those in favor? Any discussion?
Hand to the chair.
I'm sorry.
It's, it's more like a sofa with the two of you sharing it.
Love seat.
I'll vote in favor of approving the minutes.
All in vote?
Yes, is there a vote?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Any opposed? Okay.
All right.
I'm handing it back.
All right. On to the 10th. First paragraph on the top of page 2. Soil absorption should be adsorption with a D, not a B. And then next to the last, additional nitrogen. Add an AL where it says 5% addition. And that's it. I think, unless other people have others.
I have a, there was an omission. I can give this to you in hard copy unless somebody wants to change it. But I think this was important. I managed to get it into the enterprise by disguising it as 4 elements. But a member of the committee mentioned that before urine diverting toilets could be used, 4 issues would need to be addressed: homeowner compliance, enforcement of same, regulatory acceptance, and homeowner taxpayer acceptance. Anybody have a problem with that?
Nope.
Where would it be in?
I don't care.
No, I didn't know. Yeah, I just wasn't sure in terms of the flow of the document. I think we should find a place.
defer to you on that.
Well, I'll let you, since it's your.
So I would go on the page where we start number 3. You go Kristen talked, Rathman, continued, Rathman continued, and I would put you in because that was under your comments. Steve, the board commented. You know where I'm at? Yep. Okay, and then we took comments from the audience, and then we have Earl's comments. So, board comment.
So someone needs to move the acceptance of the altered, addenditated minutes.
I move we accept them as amended.
Second.
Right.
Mr. Chair.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Good.
Now, give me that.
Thank you for being so patient with us.
You got one more motion that we need.
Yes, I know. Who's going to do that? I'll move adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Our next meeting is.
All right.
All right.